In GunZ Gladiator, if you hit an enemy player with your melee weapon whilst they're holding their block, you will get recoil. In this guide, we'll take an in-depth look about how slashes are working and what's going on behind the scenes as we play. More importantly, we'll also go over a technique to avoid ourselves getting recoiled known as angling. So, how is the slash actually working mechanically? Although it seems instant, the slash can be broken down into 3 parts. Let's quickly familiarise ourselves with the hitbox of the sword in GunZ. As you can see, the sword hitbox resembles a cone shape, extending out of the player. Shout out to Crawley for creating refined guns, allowing me to use this feature for the video. Now let's get back to breaking down the slash into 3 parts and learn what's exactly happening behind the scenes. Part 1 of the slash, or simply the start of the slash, occurs immediately when you press the attack button. This will cancel some actions you are in, such as dashing, and give you full control over the camera immediately. Part 2 is the slash contact. This is the hit reg of the slash, when the game checks whether or not the enemy player is inside your hitbox or not. This occurs 100 milliseconds or 0.1 seconds after the start of the slash. Part 3 of the slash, known as the recoil check, takes place another 100 milliseconds after slash contact. The game will check the same hitbox a second time to determine whether or not the opponent is in it. If the enemy player is in your hitbox cone whilst holding their block during part 3 of the slash, your recoil check, then you will be recoiled. Conversely, if we make sure we are not aiming at the opponent's block or the opponent is not in our hitbox during the recoil check, we can avoid the recoil entirely. It should be noted that a player's block is protecting them during the entire animation. This includes the raising and lowering guard states. However, recoils can only take place when the player is in a guard state known as guard idle, the state where the enemy has their block raised and is holding their block key down. As you can see in this example, I don't really have time to get into a guard idle state. Whenever I do go for a recoil and try to hold my block key down, the next slash gets me as I don't have time to raise it again. Ultimately, we should not try to recoil a player with every single block. So, let's test that theory. If I start a single butterfly close enough to my opponent so that my recoil check is behind them and they are not in my hitbox, then I won't recoil. Please note, I don't really recommend using this in a fight to bypass a block. This is just an example to show you how the slash is working. More astute viewers may have noticed that some of the angle examples were with me turning towards the opponent, while in other examples I'm turning away. So what's the difference? When you angle towards someone, say we BF towards someone and turn 180 degrees like this example here, it can work since the recoil check will end up hitting their back. Angles like this, which finish with the opponent in your hitbox, I call unsafe angles. They are unsafe because the opponent has the opportunity to predict your angle and recoil you. If they turn away 180 degrees just before you slash, so that you recoil check whilst facing their block, you will recoil. The inputs in these 2 examples are almost identical, they are just thrown from different sides. So, if there are unsafe angles, there must be safe ones, right? Of course. In this example, no matter where my opponent would look, this angle would never recoil. To recoil this slash, my opponent would not only have to consider where he is looking, but also need to reposition his character with the movement keys. It's like adding another dimension to your angles, or rather, giving your opponent another dimension to worry about. Therefore, if you ever get recoiled by a player who is standing still, you have done an unsafe angle. If you are new to angling, it can be helpful at first to spar with a friend and take it in turns to stand still blocking, while the other practices their angles and combos. If you're wondering what to do after a safe angle because it seems to leave you a little optionless, I'm going to cover this in the combos section of the guide. The simplest way to continue this into a little combo would be to perform a butterfly backwards with the S key, like so. This move is what your opponent will expect. Another option to duke your opponent, since we know what they expect, would be to initiate a sideways dash before turning your slash into your opponent. This duke is unreactable. I will cover this move further in the future. Okay, so I just recorded all the audio clips for my guide, and I realized I didn't go into any detail about the vertical axes. So The vertical axes can play a role in recoils. If you try to use this angle theory whilst looking too far down so that your player is ghosting and your opponent is blocking and looking up, even whilst performing a successful angle, you will still recoil. However, if you don't look too far down, or more precisely, recoil check whilst looking down, then you shouldn't really have to worry about this. What we can take from this is if we notice somebody is attacking us and they're looking down a lot, then we should look up while we block, and even if they're angling, we should still get the recoil on them. Two other quick notable mentions are, if you're on the ground and you ground slash and look 100% down, you cannot be recoiled. And also, if you jump and you're at the peak of your jump and you're higher than the enemy player, the slash can also not be recoiled. The enemy needs to look down and jump and position higher than you to get a recoil. However, I wouldn't really rely too much on these angles. And verticality, it doesn't really lead into anything and you're just going to be swinging into their block. But I thought it was worth mentioning for the video. That just about wraps up everything I wanted to talk about. So thanks for watching and good luck.